and it would also give him a double portion of the inheritance. Well, in chapter 26, we find out there were a couple instances, and one of them was the Abrahamic covenant is passed on to Isaac. Now, we've talked about the Abrahamic covenant, and it was repeated to Abraham about 3 times. I know chapter 15, chapter 17, and I think chapter 22. Don't quote me on that one. But here the Abrahamic covenant is now passed on to Isaac. And so when we say the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they are the first 3 people that the covenant of God is passed to. He made it with Abraham, and now it's being passed to Isaac, his son. In chapter 26, verse 12, we find out that Isaac became very, very wealthy. And actually, it will say because God blessed him. Blessed him with agriculture, blessed him with stock, livestock, blessed him with servants and maidservants. So he became very wealthy. Then also in there's a little bit of a contention between Isaac and the Amalekites, who were the Philistine people that were living real close by. And it's over the same thing that Abraham had a problem with. It was over a well that was dug, hand dug. Which in that dry climate, you can see where water was very precious. So when you dig a well and you finally found a place that would provide enough water for your family, your livestock, and everything, it was very precious. Well, there was a contention over it, and a little bit later, the contention being solved, Isaac goes and builds an altar, and he worships Jehovah, Yahweh God. At the end of chapter 26 now, we find out Esau is going to marry. And he chose 2, actually, Hittite women. That's those tribes that were non-God worshippers, and they were actually called pagan from the Jewish perspective. And the thing that stands out about this marriage is the last couple verses says these women became a source of grief to Rebekah and Isaac. But what they did, we're not told. What practices they brought in, we're not told. Whatever they did, they were a source of grief. Now, chapter 27 is where our lesson is going to come from today, but your book is on page 30. It isn't going to start till verse 18. So we need a little bit of background information in chapters 27, 1 through 17, and here's what it is. We found out, first of all, that Ishmael died at age 137. And that's found in chapter 27, verse 17. So we're going to find out at this time, when Ishmael died at 137, Isaac himself is 137. And that's how it starts out. Whether some commentators say that because Ishmael dies at 137, when Isaac reaches 137, he thinks, well, my time is near, I am ready to die. Complicated by the fact that his eyesight was very, very poor. And he made him in bad health, and he really got thinking that the end is near. And so when he's thinking that his time to die is coming close, his thought goes right away to the blessings to be bestowed upon his 2 sons, Jacob and Esau, I'm sorry. But here's the fact. He did not die. He actually lived 43 more years, and he didn't die to the age of 180. So that was sort of something that he thought about and that never happened. But it was strong enough within, whether he was sickly, whether it was just his eyesight, whatever it was, he thought his days were finished. And so because of that, we find out that he called Esau in, his favorite son, and this is noted all through Scripture. Isaac had a favorite son, and it was Esau. Rebekah had a favorite son, and it was Jacob. And that posed all kinds of rivalries within the family, all kinds of problems within this family. So he called Esau his favorite son, and he said, I just want a last meal before I die. And I want that venison that you bring and how you prepare it, how you season it, or whatever. You can just bring me this meal. At the end of it, I will bestow upon you my blessing. Knowing that the birthright had already been sold, and now he wants to bestow on him a blessing. So Esau takes off and goes out to the fields, to the woods, to the hillside to find this venison to fix for his father. But Rebekah was listening, and she heard the whole thing. So she quickly calls Jacob and says to him, "Go get 2 goats, and I will prepare them, and I'll prepare them just the way your father likes them, and I'll make it taste just like the venison." Somebody, one of the commentators said, if you put enough seasoning on any kind of meat, you can make it taste like the same. So I don't know how she did what she did, but he was going to eat goat instead of venison, but it was going to taste the same. Well, she quickly calls Jacob. She tells him this, and she tells them her plan, or the plan that you are going to impersonate Esau, and that way you will stop the blessing from going to Esau, and it will now come on you. It never does tell us whether Isaac knew all the details of the what the Lord had told her when she was still pregnant with the twins. It's hard to believe that he didn't know all that. If he did, he was sort of laying it aside and saying, "I don't want God's will here," or "I don't believe what she said God said." Instead, I want my will. I want Esau, my favorite, to get not only the birthright, but the blessing also. So it's hard to figure out what really is going on here, or how convinced, when it said the Lord actually spoke to Rebekah, how emphatic that was, how sure she was that it was Jacob that was to receive the blessing on that. That is all pretty much conjecture from just a couple of the words from the Bible, but we do find out, even in the book of Hebrews, that Jacob was the one that God had in planned all along for to receive this blessing and this birthright. So right away, Jacob has questions. I look completely different than Esau. I actually even smell different, right? And he said, my voice isn't quite as low, maybe. It doesn't sound like Esau. How am I going to change my voice to make it sound like Esau? And if he would reach out and touch me, ooh, what am I going to do? I don't even have hair on my arms, and you know how hairy that Esau is. Well, she had a plan for all that, and as your scripture is going to tell you on page 30, a trap is going to be set. A trap is going to be set. She had the plan that she would take some of the hair from the goat and fasten it to Jacob's arms. She actually went and grabbed some of Esau's clothes and dressed Jacob in those clothes. Jacob is probably 40 years old at the time, so he's no young chick here. But he goes along with the plan, whether Rebekah tells him that this is what God said, I'm just carrying it out. But anyhow, the food is prepared, and now the trap is set. Now I want you to notice as we read these verses, verses 18 through, 20, how quickly the deceit is going to turn into lies. And there's going to be actually about 5 lies that we are going to find that were spoken, direct lies, that started out as deceit. So let's look at verses 18, and we'll read these responsively, verses 18 through 20. When he came to his father, he said, "My father." And this is Jacob, okay? Because we're coming right in on. This is Jacob who's going to his father. My father. And he answered, here I am. Who are you, my son?
Jacob replied to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may bless me.
But Isaac said to his son, how did you ever find it so quickly, my son? He replied, because the Lord your God made it happen to me. Okay, let's go ahead and switch over and let's continue to read on page 32, and we'll continue to read those.
Then Isaac said to Jacob, please come closer so I can touch you, my son. Are you really my son Esau or not?
So Jacob came closer to his father, and when he touched him, he said, it's the voice of Jacob, but the hands, they're the hands of Esau.
He did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like those of brother Esau. So he blessed him.
And again he asked, are you really my son Esau? And he replied, I am.
Then he said, bring it closer to me, and let me eat some of my son's game, so that I can bless you. Jacob brought it closer to him, and he ate. He brought him wine, and he drank.
Then his father Isaac said to him, please come closer and kiss me, my son.
So he came closer and kissed him. When Isaac smelled his clothes, he smelled him and said, the smell of my son is like the smell of the field that the Lord blessed.
Okay, your key titles to these scriptures you just read were the trap set, and now the deception is carried out. Did you catch any of the deceit that turned into lies? That was the plan was a deceitful plan. But when questions were asked, direct questions, there were a number of lies that were told. Did you catch any of those?
Yes.
Yes.
What did you catch there?
That Jacob said he was Esau.
The first one is, he asked, who are you, my son? And he replied with a very direct, deliberate lie, I am Esau. Now, what's another one?
So how did you find the game so quickly? This is the Lord your God made it count.
Yes, that's the last one. You missed 2 or 3 in between there, but that is the last one. He says, I got it so quickly because God was with me, and he sped me on my way, and he brought the deer right to me, and that's how it all happened so quickly. Okay?
The next one is where Rebecca had put some fur on him, and so when Isaac came up, asked him to come over, he thought he was, because Esau was hairy and Jacob was not, he thought Jacob was.
Okay, that is, he said, I am Esau. Anybody catch 2 or 3 other ones?
He told him that he had done what he had asked him to do.
Okay, that's my next one. He said, well, that's the third one. In between that, it says, I am Esau, your firstborn. Okay, there's 2 lies right there. You're not Esau, and you're not the firstborn. And then, Janice, I did what you asked me to do. What did he ask? He asked to go out and catch venison and prepare it. And he said, that's exactly what I did. Then the next one, he said, the one in between that is, eat my venison. What was Isaac actually eating? He was eating goats. What? Okay, there was at least 5, and there's other insinuated in there, but there's 5 very deliberate, direct lies that actually came from this little bit of deceit, or this plan of deceit. So the deception was carried out. Now let's read the rest of the story over on page 34 of your book, and it's called The Blessing is Granted. The blessing is granted. And we're going to find out who the blessing was granted to and how it was done. I don't know who stopped reading first, but so I'll start again. May God give you, this is the blessing, now that Isaac is going to put on who he thinks is Esau, but instead is Jacob, okay? May God give to you, my son, I'll put that in there, from the dew of the sky and from the riches of the land, an abundance of grain and new wine.
May the people serve you, and nations bow and worship you. Be master over your relatives. May your mother's sons bow to worship you. Those who curse you will be cursed, and those who bless you will be blessed.
As soon as Isaac had finished the blessing Jacob, and Jacob had left the presence of his father Isaac, his brother Esau arrived from hunting. Well, the rest of the story, you have to read in the Bible. The rest of the story is simply like this. First of all, let's talk a little bit about the blessing. There are probably three, anyhow, important parts about this blessing that was granted to him. It was parts that were taken from the Abrahamic covenant that God gave to Abraham, God repeated to Isaac, and now he included these parts in this blessing as he was blessing his son. So the material blessings, he said, you're going to have material blessing. And you can kind of grasp a little bit. It's going to be agricultural blessing. The ground's going to respond to you. It's going to grow well for you. Everything's going to be well. You're going to have grain. You're going to have new wine. Then he goes down to the next part of that blessing. He says, you're going to be master, or you're going to be the leader over all your relatives, or over this whole clan, this tribe of people. You are going to be the leader. And the last part of that, you're going to be held in very high esteem. The people who are going to bless you will be blessed. They're going to see, if they come to you and bless you and acknowledge you, they're going to reap blessings. But if they would happen to curse you, they're going to be cursed. So it's going to be a publicized way by the results of people who come to you. A blessing, it was more of like a prophetic blessing that he gave to him. And there is a little bit of a distinction between a blessing and a birthright. I told you before, the birthright comes at birth to the eldest. And it is basically to be the leader of the family and to get a double portion of this. Now, a blessing, actually, the definition that a biblical blessing is a solemn, deliberate act through which specific and concrete advantages are given. So somebody could have a blessing, and that's the case that we'll eventually study in Jacob's 12 sons. Judah's going to get the blessing of the descendant that the Messiah will come from, and he is not. He's the fourthborn, not the firstborn. So it will be a blessing. A birthright is given to the eldest, but a blessing can be chosen to give unto others. Well, the rest of the story here is Esau returns. He comes with food, and verse 35 it says, Jacob, when he came in to give it to Isaac, Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" "Well, I am Esau, your son. I just did what you asked me to do." And verse 35 will say, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Your brother came deceitfully to me and took your blessing. So Esau is now going to weep in tears, because not only was my birthright stolen, although he gave it, but he was bribed into it. I sold my birthright, and my whole life was now hinging on this blessing that I was going to get. And now my brother deceitfully took away this blessing. Once a blessing is pronounced, it can't be taken back. It's a very solemn kind of ceremony thing that is. So he said, "Your brother took my birthright and my blessing." So it says that Esau weeps for a blessing and cries out to Isaac, "Don't you have a blessing for me? Please, please, please give me one." And so Isaac said, well, I will give you a blessing, but it is not going to be the prophetic blessing that's passed down from your grandfather Abraham. It's not going to be that. That one is already given. So, but I'll give you a blessing. And so he says, you're going to live by the sword. You're going to serve your brother. That had to come with a biggie, right? And your dwelling is going to be away from the riches of the earth. We do know that Esau ended up settling in the area of Edom, which is more of a very arid land. He became a nomad, so to speak, and so all these came to act on Esau. Well, Esau holds a grudge, right? He holds that grudge as a polite word because he actually makes a vow that the day my father dies, I will kill Jacob. That way, I'll get the blessing and the birthright. So he vows to return the violence, and he vows to do that. But he did not want to do that while his father still was alive. Well, what happens next is, Rebecca hears all this. She knows it is not safe for Jacob to be here. Plus, she knows that she doesn't want Jacob to have a wife from the Hittite people, the people surrounding them. So she goes to Isaac, and together they make the decision that they are going to send Jacob to her brother Laban. Do you remember last week's lesson when Rebecca, the brother gave Rebecca away to Isaac's servant to come marry? Now he's sending Jacob back, which is going to be no easy trek either, traveling alone for about 500 to 700 miles back to where Rebecca lived, her homeland, and to her brother Laban. Well, in today's lesson, we found out there were many, many unwise choices that were made. The family was divided, obviously, from the very beginning because Isaac loved Esau, Rebecca loved Jacob, and it didn't seem to be much of any kind of continuity between the family at all. They were divided. Out of love for Esau, perhaps that's why he chose to give the blessing to Esau. So did he disregard God? Did he not know God? Or did he feel that at this point, I know better than God? He disregarded God. So we find an unwise choice that Isaac actually made. Now Rebecca, she made some unwise choices too. She may have had that special message from God, but you know what she did? She didn't wait for God to work it out the way he wanted to work it out. She decided, I'm going to take matters into my hands and I will fix this. So not waiting on God, she was deceived, and she did deceive. She caused friction, and she caused Jacob was sent away out of fear. And here's what the consequence for her was. She never saw Jacob again. She died before he returned. She never saw any of the grandchildren when Jacob had the 12 sons and the daughter. She never saw that. So Rebecca had some severe consequences to her life. Now, applying the text, it says to avoid justifying wrong actions. Can you see where we are to learn? Because eventually God did work all this out to his purpose. Because no matter what we do to change the way God would work it out, God still had the ultimate purpose, and he knew what he was going to do. And it all worked out in the very, very end. But do you see all the consequences that the people reaped because they did not wait on God, did not move with God? Isaac actually died without any major accomplishment recorded in the Bible about him. You can search the Bible all over and you can find very much about any accomplishment that Isaac had. Rebecca, she died in sorrow because she never saw Jacob again, the one son she loved, never saw any of his children, her grandchildren. Esau, he became, he left the promised land completely and was populated in the land of Eden. And Jacob had to leave home. What did we learn? What did you learn from this lesson? Put it in your own words.
The lesson says that there are consequences for sin, for deceit.
That's probably the main lesson from this, that we can see that even God's plan that was altered, he eventually was sovereign and divine in working that plan out, but the people involved suffered severe consequences because they went ahead of God. And are you able to see a little bit why that little, looks like that little character flaw, or that little unpleasing act of deceit, what it looks like in God's sight? Do you see how it can grow? And I think that is so important to us. Actually, on Wednesday night, and even during Sunday service, the pastor is trying to kind of fine-tune our character to be more like Christ. By the things that we say, the things that we think, the things that we tolerate, the things that we don't, and on as his last sermons have been. This is one of those integrity things. This is one of those character traits. And it's easy to think, oh, well, I don't practice deceit. And then when you really look deep in your heart, when I look deep in my heart, there are many, many areas that I'm prone, if I don't commit deceit, toward God, toward others, and toward myself. Who am I fooling, right? Yet we are so dumb to think that we can fool. We can fool God. We can make it look like God that, I'm right here with you. So kind of examine our lives in this. And like I said, it's sort of a fine-tuning thing on this character, this integrity of deceit. Is there deceit in your life? God's very mindful of it. He sees it, and he holds us and will hold us accountable when we practice deceit. Didn't work?